You're listening to Theater in College Hoops. I'm Subi. Alongside me is Taylor Dammel. We're brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. Your college hooper of the day, Joe Dumars from McNeese State. I doubt people knew that. And I doubt people knew that Joe Dumars is a McNeese State guy. Everyone knows him about the Pistons, and everyone knows about his great NBA career and honestly his great front office career. But Joe Dumars, the reason I had him in as the college hooper of the day is because the Southland title game was played today on his court in Lake Charles. He's from Natchitoches. The hometown team did not get it done, and I mean, there's really no point in talking about the Southland. We're going to talk week 2 Jerome I had Northwestern State, but getting off the rails here. Joe Dumars, college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterandcollegehoops.com and make sure to follow us at CBB Theater. You should also follow me at Subi232 to find out where the theat is, and make sure to follow Taylor at Taylor Dammel. Let's open the curtains. Taylor, back here on a beautiful Thursday. Now we have the big guys coming in for Jerome, and we've already had some amazing finishes thus far, but why don't we just briefly touch on some big items that have occurred here before we get into our week 2 picks. I know that's why we are all here. I think the big news of the day, Taylor, Jim Boeheim, thoughts, reactions.
God, thank God. Finally. This guy should have retired 10 years ago. I mean, does anybody have any other reaction than that? There can't be. I've searched Twitter and I don't think anybody's like, oh my God, I'm going to miss Jim Boeheim. Like what a caring, nice guy to deal with in post-game press conferences. His teams are getting smoked because that defense is completely worthless in today's college basketball land. Hey, let's play a zone that makes everybody shoot threes when everybody only wants to shoot threes. Like you're playing right into what the offense wants you to do at this point. So no, I'm going to say good riddance, Jim Boeheim. Is that too harsh, you think?
Look, I'm not going to temper you or hold you back. That's your prerogative. That's your outlook. That's your thought process. But I will say this. I do think, for lack of a better term, the ball washing of Jim Boeheim that we've immediately gotten is a little bit too much, because I even heard Rob Stone, who then I love Rob Stone, by the way. And at the end of his little segment, he said, would it be something to the effect, would it be too much to just, after a legendary career, smile and just go off to the sunset? But Rob Stone had to say, when he went to Casey Jacobson and Donnie Marshall about their thoughts, he had to say, let's put aside all the media relationship sort of things and his surly behavior. Tell us about Jim Boeheim, the coach. And it's like, no. I'm actually not going to do that when I think about Jim Boeheim, because it's happened so many times. He has been remarkably disrespectful in the media, and he's made interviews super awkward. He's given BS responses that have been just straight up rude. They're so rude. That being said, I am able to reconcile the fact that the man coached at Syracuse, his alma mater, for nearly half a century, won a title, number of Final Fours, on the Olympic staff as well. So it really is. He's one of those guys where, and again, I don't know him personally. You're going to get the former players that are going to be like, he's misunderstood. You don't know him. You're going to get guys that may not be that close to him. You're going to get people in the middle that say, well, yeah, or they'll sugarcoat it and say, quote, Jim Boeheim's a no BS kind of guy. I kind of think he's an asshole, but he's also a great coach.
I think he was formerly a great coach. I think this is a guy, the definition of that the game has passed you by. Like, think of how long Coach K coached for, right? A similar amount of years. Coach K's teams were always relevant, adapted to the style of the game, was vehemently not a fan of the one and done when that first started happening, but then adapted and became maybe the best one and done coach in the history of college basketball. That's how you adapt and overcome. Jim Boeheim said, fuck everybody. I'm going to keep doing my shit the way I want to. And even though he had some good runs in the last decade, his teams were never good. They had some good runs in the tournament, coming out of, like the play-in game and whatnot. But yeah, you look at the last couple of years, just poor recruiting, essentially only recruiting players whose name was the same last name as his, and then not adapting his style to what current college basketball is. You played the same style of basketball in a lot of ways, especially defensively, obviously, as we always have known, for 47 years. And it's great. But let me quote my favorite quote, actually, of all time, from Henry Ford, although history has not really, actually, it has pretty applicable because history has not done a lot of favors for Henry Ford either. But the same thing that makes a business successful is the same thing that causes it to fail. And that's passionate adherence to a strategy. And that is the absolute definition of Syracuse basketball.
You are made for corporate America, dude. You are made for the rat race. I know you're a very successful realtor, and that's not the rat race. It's not a 9 to 5.
It's a different race. Yeah, it's a whole different race.
I understand that. We've had that conversation, but I mean, I could absolutely see that on some bullshit PowerPoint that my CEO puts up on a Q1 town hall. I could see that on slide 1. Repeat that quote again.
The same thing that causes a business to be successful is the same thing that causes it to fail. Passionate adherence to a strategy.
You know what? I'm actually switching roles here soon. I'm still at the same company, but I'm switching roles. I'm probably going to say that as my icebreaker. I don't have a fun fact or anything, but here's a quote for you guys that I want to apply throughout my time here with this team. And I'm not even going to attribute it to Henry Ford. I'm going to say I came up with it on my own.
Well, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing it a bit. I'm sure he said it a little different, whatever. But that is the whole point of it. Yeah, is that, but it really is the definition of Syracuse basketball. Is that their strategy and their scheme worked so well for so long that when the game changed, Boeheim was unwilling to do so. Not unlike Henry Ford also as well. So I think unintentionally that was a great bow, if I may, I think that was a great, circle. I just put that all in.
Beautiful history lesson here. And it could have also been Henry Ford who said, get the hell out of a 2-3 zone. I don't know. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, Jim Boeheim, before we move on, I just want to make sure we understand where you are in your thought process and your opinion and thoughts on Boeheim. I just want to make sure that we don't go the complete opposite way, which is to say, just look strictly at the wins. Look at what he did for the Big East Conference, which is all tremendous stuff. But his off-court behavior was just so rude and terrible. And I think that is part of how I'm going to remember Jim Boeheim.
So I think a really interesting question going forward is, what is Syracuse basketball really? Their entirety of success essentially has been under Jim Boeheim. 50 years, half a century, right? And a lot of programs, have that discussion where it's like, is this a one coach program? It's been a discussion at Arizona. It's been a discussion at UConn. It's been a discussion even at Duke. In some of the schools, like in Arizona, like a UConn, like a Duke, have been able, well, we don't know yet with Duke not necessarily, but I think they're obviously trending the right direction. Is the program coach based, or is this the program? We just slide coaches in and out. I'm not so sure that Syracuse can follow like an Arizona or like a Duke or like a North Carolina that can just go, oh yeah, we're just going to slide another coach in here and keep it trucking. I'm not sure that they are as nationally relevant as they would like to think that they are. And especially without their lead man now, take all the bad things I just said out about Jim Boeheim aside, you can at least say, okay, yeah, this guy went to, X amount of number of Final Fours, won a national championship, coached Carmelo, who's somehow still, relevant in the college basketball world, or the basketball world to some degree, even though he's not even in the league. But I'm just not sure. It's like, who do you hang your hat on that's a Syracuse basketball player that you go, oh man, you're right, this program is just going to keep going? I don't know. Maybe I'm off base. I'm literally wearing an orange hat right now, and blue hat, which is funny that we're having this discussion. But I'm not sure that I see them being all that successful for a while, because I just don't look at it as that attractive of a job for a number of reasons: location, where, who you're following, recent success. I don't know. Am I off base in that thought?
So I think you're just getting a little too far ahead of yourself, in the sense that I get what you're saying in terms of expectations, but if I was a Syracuse fan, it's gotten so bad that I just want to finish in the top half of the ACC starting next
Okay.
year.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what
Sure.
I'm saying. Like, I get the goal is to get back to national prominence, get back to going to Final Fours, but you're nowhere near that. You aren't close to that. Okay. And I don't even think Duke is close to a Final Four on a year in and year out basis. But and you have to say, okay, what do we have here with John Shire? We don't know until we actually start playing the games. John Shire's done an awesome job. I want that to be known. No one's ever going to fill the shoes of Coach K. John Shire's done a tremendous job. He didn't lose a game at home in Cameron, and he's got them solidified in the NCAA tournament. Okay, so in year one, that's all you can really ask for. If I'm a Syracuse fan, I'm not even thinking about national relevance. I'm not thinking about stacking conference titles, anything like that. Let's finish in the top half of the ACC, maybe a little higher. But look, no Coach K, no Roy Williams, no Jay Wright, no Jim Boeheim. That's a ton of wins. That's a ton of Final Fours and championships. Certainly a new era and a fresh start for four of those teams now. We'll see what Syracuse does next year.
Syracuse only 4 seasons of 20 wins or more in the last 9 years.
Unacceptable. And that's the thing, Taylor. If you're going to hold yourself to the standard that you described, you can't have that. I'm telling you, if Kenny Payne goes under 500, Louisville's saying all the right things, but a 4-20 some odd whatever record, that ain't gonna fly at Louisville. Okay, so if Kenny Payne, I think if he's not even at least on the bubble next year, he's gone. So, but that's completely unrelated. But Jim Boeheim, hell of a career between the lines. Hopefully, we don't have to hear from him on a microphone though anymore. Taylor, real quick, Jaylen Clark done for the season. I personally think people are jumping off of the UCLA bandwagon a little too quickly here. I don't know if they're necessarily a national title winning team, but I do think that they can get to Houston still, or I do think they can at least get to the Elite Eight based off of Jaquez and Tiger Campbell stepping up. But Jaylen Clark is their best defender. It is a big blow, but I would push back on people saying that they're done in the round of 16 or they're done round of 32. I still think UCLA is very good. I don't think this impacts them like the Ziegler injury impacts Tennessee, or that's how I foresee it. But am I off base here in the impact of the Jaylen Clark loss?
No, I think you can get to the Sweet 16 with Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez alone. I think you're totally, on base, I guess, with that. But I think you're right. I think Elite Eight is kind of where their ceiling is now. And, I guess just a question now is like, even do you think that this team is better than even like an Arizona than without Jaylen Clark? Because if they're not better than Arizona, then they're just using them as an example, then they're not good enough to go past the Elite Eight. It would be my kind of way of putting it, is where, because Arizona's ceiling is probably closer to an Elite Eight than it is a Final Four as well, and that's just being totally transparent. So I think like, okay, here's the conference rival that you guys have, 2 teams in the top 10, top 8, likely a number 1 and maybe a number 2 or 3 seed. If they're not even good enough to beat the other good team in their conference, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get any further than that. So that would be my problem, is every team that's of that level has 2 really good players for the most part. It's when you start getting to that 3rd player, that 4th player. And it's like, if you don't have that 3rd guy, when you're trying to get not to the Sweet 16, whatever, but once you get to the Elite Eights, the Final Fours of the world, like UCLA isn't beating Houston at any point without Jaylen Clark. They're not beating, God, I don't know.
I'd give an example of Alabama, actually, because they played an epic game in the bubble in Indianapolis a couple of years ago where Bama forced overtime. But if you think about Bama's scorching offense this year, you need a Jaylen Clark.
Totally. Yeah. So I think it definitely limits their ceiling in terms of national championship. But you're right. I mean, I think they're still going to be successful. I know this is all matchup based, and I guess it's whatever your definition of success is if you're a UCLA fan. I think it's a lot. I hate to make too many Arizona points here, but I think it's a lot like when Brandon Ashley got hurt about 10 years ago with Arizona. Brandon Ashley was not necessarily Arizona's best player, but he was just that guy that you needed to fill that void as your third option. And then you ended up playing a team that needed a Brandon Ashley to guard a guy like Frank Kaminsky. I could see that happening for UCLA in this situation. They're just not good enough offensively either to miss out on one of their key cogs. Like, they can't lose. I know that they'll have people make up for the 13 points a game, but they're not that good enough offensively to lose his offensive side of power either. So I just think, just a little bit off.
13.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty damn good. I didn't know he was that potent offensively.
Right. 13, 6, and 2. So
that is big for a team that goes like 3 minutes without scoring sometimes.
Yeah. And that only puts up, whatever number of points a game that they do. I mean, they're efficient. They just don't get a lot of possessions. They average 74 points a game. So you're talking about 130th in the country in points per game. We're not subtracting 13 points from that, right? Obviously, because someone's got to play in that position. But yeah, I think it's just too big of a loss for them to go all the way down to cutting the nets this year.
Well, Jaime Jaquez, your Pac-12 Player of the Year. Show it, my dude.
That's another discussion.
I can't get into that. I agree. I think Azuolas Tubelis should have won, but that's fine. Jaime Jaquez, though, should not have been. I do see some homers that are like, he's not even in the discussion. This is so clear cut. Azuolas Tubelis, like, no, we can entertain the discussion of Jaime Jaquez, but I really don't want to dive into that rabbit hole. That's way too much.
That's a 20 more minute. That's a 20-minute.
It's a whole episode.
Discussion. And I've already brought up Arizona twice. So yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. Real quick before we do dive into Jerome week 2, wild finish at MSG last night, kicking off the Big East tournament. So great. DePaul versus Seton Hall. Seton Hall blows this. Seton Hall was gaining some momentum, playing relatively well towards the end of the year. And I think on the whole, this was a good first year for Shaheen Holloway, understanding what the personnel was at Seton Hall, what the expectations were, their style of play. I thought they were competitive. I thought they had their best win of the season was in Providence on the road, smacked them up pretty good. They beat UConn as well, and they played with purpose, and you can see a real future there for Seton Hall. But this was a nasty end to their season because they had the game pretty much wrapped up against one of the worst teams in conference. And they just had so many reckless, foolish, and careless turnovers towards the end of the game. But it was a wild one, as Seton Hall did have an opportunity to win at the buzzer with a driving, slashing layup, only to be erased at the rim by DePaul. It was reviewed for a potential goaltend. So on the floor, they called a goaltend. And they said, yep, Seton Hall, you win. Let's go review it. DePaul ends up winning. Just a insane game. I don't really need to take anything away from it for either team. DePaul's not going anywhere. Seton Hall's future still bright, but so much fun kicking it off.
Yeah, a little disappointed in Seton Hall, not in their season, but in this game, simply because when I was first looking at this game, I was like, oh, this is going to be smooth. Easy one for Seton Hall. DePaul's terrible. As I referenced at least one program ago. And clearly I was incorrect on that. Crazy end, like he said, more than a little disappointing for Seton Hall. Tough to swallow when all you needed to do was beat a team that went 3-17 in conference this year.
Conference tournaments, man. Crazy. All right, Taylor, let's go ahead, dive into week 2 Jerome picks. Give us your American Conference tournament winner. Who you got? This should be pretty straightforward. I assume we're on the same page here.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really deserve a lot of discussion, does it?
No, I think we can go quick hitters for all of these because we got a lot to get to.
I'm going to go with probably the best team in college basketball, Houston.
Oh, that's it. Oh, I thought you were giving me at least like
No,
20
that's it.
additional seconds. Yeah,
No, that's
good,
it.
good.
That's all
I'm
I got.
going. I appreciate that. I'm going Houston as well. Jamal Shed, Kelvin Sampson. It's true. There's no point in adding on to this. We've spoken about them ad nauseum, and yeah, this is Houston's conference. All right, a little bit more intriguing. The ACC, who's coming out and hoisting a trophy in Greensboro?
I'd say a lot more intriguing. I'm going Duke. As anti-Duke as I generally am, I just think that they're playing really well right now, which they are. I mean, they've won 6 in a row. They unfortunately, I guess, if you want to say unfortunately, have to play Pitt first, who was the number one team in the conference until like 3 days ago. That being said, this conference is kind of, I don't want to say sucked, but it certainly is underperformed compared to the usual. But yeah, I think Duke's just playing really well. You're getting hot at the right time, as we've talked about a lot. Helps that, of course, this tournament always seems to get played in Duke's backyard, which is super helpful to them. So I'm going to go with Duke. It's just simply because they're easily the hottest team in that conference right now. Them and Miami. Virginia has been good, obviously, all year as well. But then also you get a little bit of a bonus with Duke not being one of the top 2 seeds as well. So I think it's a really good value pick as well.
I'm with you. We're starting off 2 for 2. I'm going with the Blue Devils as well. Everyone knows how much I love Miami, and I'm going to have to see what the matchups are and how that shakes out in the NCAA tournament. But I think Duke is going to win this conference tournament because, like you had referenced, they're on a 6-game winning streak entering this. They haven't lost since that incredibly controversial game in Charlottesville, where majority of Duke fans, and I think a lot of people will say they should be on a 7-game winning streak. Kyle Filipowski has been awesome. He has been their most consistent player all year. Whitehead's been a little injured. I suppose you could make the case for Jeremy Roach for Mr. Consistency, but he doesn't fill it up like Filipowski does. And they showed that, and look, you got guys like Tyrese Proctor that are slowly but surely getting better and contributing. But I think what I was very, very impressed with was walking into Chapel Hill against a team that was more desperate than a fat kid treading water, like me treading water, and they won. And they won an ugly, ugly game in Chapel Hill. So at that moment, I was like, look, I think Duke's going to win the ACC tournament. But this is all on Kyle Filipowski and Jeremy Roach. Jeremy Roach kind of had a coming out party during the NCAA tournament last year. I want to see how his postseason play continues this year, but I just think Duke will have the best player on the floor in majority of their games. Maybe not the best backcourt. I'm not sure how they stack up against Miami. I think Miami's is the best backcourt, but they're just hot right now. So give me the Blue Devils. All right, let's move on now to the A10. Taylor, who you got?
I'm going to go with the 2-headed monster of Darius Quisenberry and DJ Khaled Moore. Let's go with Fordham, the Rams. Wow, I'm seeing a fist bump right now. Are we 3 for 3 right now?
Are you not seeing the screen that I'm sharing?
I'm okay. The viewers aren't, or the listeners aren't. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. That was poor. Go ahead. You did a good job of acting.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to go with Fordham. I'm a big value guy, as we've talked about before. There were a bunch of teams, Dayton, St. Louis, also all tied 3 back of VCU. I think this conference is just a little too close to just take the top seed type of deal. And Fordham, like I said, has 2 scorers that can fill it up in these conference tournaments. That's very helpful. And they lost 1 game down the stretch to George Mason. Did lose to VCU. Got smoked by VCU, actually, if we're being honest. When they played a game at VCU earlier this year. But I just like this Fordham team, at least, behind a guy that can really score as many points as you want him to in Darius Quisenberry. Moore also finished 3rd team all-conference. Quisenberry, 2nd team all-conference. That's enough for me to go with Fordham.
I'm on the Rams as well. Terrible conference. This is going to be a one bid A10, which I probably wouldn't have foreseen in the beginning of the year when I watched Dayton live in their first game against Lindenwood, or when I picked St. Louis to win the conference in the regular season. And I had no idea that VCU was going to show up and show out like they did during the regular season. All of that said, I'm going to go with the coach of the year in Keith Ergo. Everyone wants to talk about Kyle Neptune turning it around here at Villanova because he's had so many injuries that he's had to deal with. And I understand that because Villanova is the bigger program, bigger name. But we're not talking enough about the succession job that Keith Ergo has done at Fordham. I thought he's been tremendous. And this is in a league where another first-year head coach, I don't even know if it's technically to the league, but he's back, Archie Miller, right? He outperformed him. So I'm going to go Fordham as well. And another reason is because some of these other teams, these other challengers, I feel like we put stock into them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. We're over here hyping up Yuri Collins in St. Louis. They're probably the most talented team in the A10, and they're just not consistent. You're hyping up Dayton with the experience and Anthony Grant. They're just not consistent enough. You could make the case for Fordham, but they haven't at least burned me, right? I feel like these other teams have completely burnt me. So I'm going to go Fordham as well. Keith Ergo. And why the hell not? Look, in a conference that's only going to get one, why the hell can't Fordham go ahead and be that representative? All right, T. Big East. MSG.
As amazing of a job as Shaka Smart has done this year with Marquette, what we talked about 2 episodes ago, really one of the most underrated performances of a basketball team and of a coach in this country this year. I'm going with the 2 seed Xavier. We've talked about this a number of times. If Fremantle comes back, Jack Nungy,
Fremantle's done.
Boom. Oh, is he done? Well, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even give a shit. Give a shit. I'm still going with Xavier. They still finished second without him. So, I just like Boom that much. That lead guard plays we've talked about, a guy who just, last week scored 33 points in leading his team to a big win. I really wanted to take Providence just of where they finished in the standings. They were the 5th seed, and that's probably the best value pick you could get out of this. But I'm going to roll with Sean Miller and Xavier, even without Fremantle.
I got to go UConn here. A couple weeks ago, I did predict, hug for me, that they were going to finish this season on a white hot streak. And not just a red hot streak, a white hot streak. And I think that's what they've been doing. They are now back to playing at the level. And a few months ago, I tweeted, look, when they play at their top level, I think they're Final Four good. And I still believe that. The issue is that they weren't doing that consistently at all. They actually went about 3 weeks to a month of just playing terrible basketball. And that's when we saw UConn tumble. But they've done a really nice job of regrouping and getting back to a top 10, top 15 type of team. Andre Jackson, I think he needs to show up and be the man. I trust in Adama Sanogo, who's a grizzled veteran, right? I trust in Jordan Hawkins. Maybe he can get his shot going. And I also think Danny Hurley understands that it's not a make or break season, but it's continuing to inch closer and closer to that because he needs a conference, or he needs a postseason win in the NCAA tournament, I should say. And I think the best way to do that for UConn, to avoid a dangerous, let's say 14 or a 13 seed, right? If they're the 3 or the 4, is to win this conference tournament. And in addition to that, this is UConn's barn. MSG is where UConn fans come and show up in droves. So I believe UConn gets it done behind their talent. I think they've recaptured it. And I think Danny Hurley understands that right now he can't wait for NCAA tournament time to tip off, to ratchet it up. This is it right now. And I think Hurley's a maniac and enough to say, hey, we lose our first game against Providence, we're done for the season. I feel like that's kind of the messaging for him. Let's move now to the Big Ten. Who you got?
Well, Sub, I'm rolling here with, you should know who I'm taking.
Purdue? Oh, no, Iowa.
Is this heaven? No, it's Iowa, Sub. It's baseball season. We should know that reference. Come on, Field of Dreams, folks. I'm rolling with Iowa. I've liked Iowa all year. I can't quit them now. They're such a good team offensively. It's a team that I just really, really enjoy watching. And I think to myself, okay, if they can just get like 3 stops a game, they're going to win. And unfortunately, some of those games they only get 2 stops, which is unfortunate. They have a matchup with Ohio State today, which I think they should win. Obviously, Murray's their leading scorer. We know all about him. We know all about McCaffrey's every McCaffrey that's involved there at Iowa. I just think they fill it up a lot, and I think this Big Ten, when you're talking about Northwestern being the 2 seed, wasn't going to take them as complimentary we've been of them this year. Wasn't going to take them. Don't feel strongly about Purdue as of late. Don't feel strongly about Michigan State. Don't feel strongly about Indiana. You just walk down this list and you're like, well, shit, why not at this point with a team that has such a talented player in Murray that could go off at any time and that can fill it up like this. I don't feel confident in any of these Big Ten teams. In fact, if you look at everyone behind Purdue, essentially finished at 11-9 or 12-8 until that 9th place team or some bullshit like that. So you might as well go with the best value of all of that. And so I think Purdue or Iowa is I don't even know what seed are they? They're like the 5th or 6th seed, I think. Yeah, they're well down the list, I believe. So I'm rolling with Iowa just because they can fill it up.
Watch out for Philip Rebracha too. I think he made one of the all Big Ten teams. He's been a spark and really tremendous for the Hawkeyes. I'm going to go with Michigan State. I agree with you that the Big Ten is pretty meh, right? In the middle there, once you get past Purdue and Northwestern, everyone's got like 7 conference losses for the most part. It's just a complete cluster and a car pile up, it seems like. I love Indiana. This is kind of like my ACC thoughts with Miami. I actually think Indiana has a real deep threat in them, but they haven't been playing well entering into this tournament. Even against Michigan, they probably should have lost that game. Rutgers, no. Purdue, I'm not sure if I can buy them winning the whole thing with the amount of pressure that's going to be on them. And yeah, to your point about Northwestern, no. But Michigan State, this is where I become a slut for guard play, man. Tyson Walker, AJ Hoggard. AJ Hoggard is one of my foxhole point guards. I want him. I want DeJuan Wilson. And no, not DeJuan Wilson. DeJuan Harris, excuse me. Combine him and Jaylen Wilson. And then I also want the guy from Kansas State, Marquise Noel. But AJ Hoggard is in there as well. Tyson Walker. I think Tyson Walker is going to be electric. He's been the driving force for the Spartans on offense. And then the X factor for me, Hauser. Joey Hauser has to show up and knock down shots when he's open. He's going to be crucial for them. I don't really expect much from their bigs in Sissoko especially, but those 3 guys, Hoggard, Tyson Walker, Hauser, get it done for me, baby. I'm also happy that I didn't just revert to January, February Izzo.
How crazy is it that when the Hauser brothers left Marquette, that somehow Marquette, in the same amount of time that the Hauser brothers are still in college, Marquette won their conference and is a top 6 team in the country?
That is insane. What a nugget. What a nugget, right? I'm out here rooting for Joey Hauser for my Jerome pick and Sam Hauser for the Celtics. He's driving me up a wall right now. But yeah, Big Ten tournament is got to be wonderful. We already have an upset with Ohio State beating Wisconsin. Get the hell out of here, Wisconsin. I don't want to hear any more from them. Big 12. Well, go ahead, Taylor.
Don't let Ohio State win another game now, then, and because then we're gonna have to talk about them back on the bubble. Unfortunately, even as
not
bad as they. I mean, if they win a couple more games, yeah. They
got to win.
They're just trying to shove as many Big Ten teams as possible down our throat.
That's right. All right, Taylor, Big 12.
Speaking of being a slut for guard play, give me TCU. Let's go way down that list. Really wanted to take K-State, every man a Wildcat, all that. I'm honestly just was trying to find any reason not to take Kansas.
It's tough.
I know. It's like, if all conferences that you should take the number 1 seed, it's probably this one, but I'm just always rooting for anyone but Kansas. And I just kind of started going down the list, and yeah, it's like, a team that played well in the tournament last year, despite only getting to the round of 32. Obviously, Mike Miles and Damian Baugh are a great backcourt, despite Mike Miles only scoring like 1 point the other day in a win, funny enough, against Texas. I just think this team they're not world beaters by any means, but I think they have an opportunity with their guard play to stretch out a few games here. I think really the key is I think they can get to the championship game. Can they push themselves over the top? I don't know, but I'm going with TCU.
I'm going Baylor here. Another great backcourt. Cryer, Flagler, and I think Keontae George is going to really step up as a talented freshman. So I love this Baylor team. They've kind of gone back into the weeds. This season has been them in the weeds in the beginning of the year. Then they surged. They were almost a top 5 team for about a week and a half. And then they've kind of regressed just a little bit, especially with that loss to Iowa State. But I'm going to go Baylor here. Strictly because of the experience, the Scott Drew factor. I love the Bears in this spot for the Big 12. All right. Now, and also, actually, Taylor, real quick about TCU, your boy Lampkin has a bone to pick with Jamie Dixon, apparently.
Yeah, I saw that there's some problems happening. I'm not sure. I'm not that internally knowledgeable of the TCU basketball program, but we'll figure it out. Okay, we'll figure it out down there in Fort Worth.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I feel bad. I want to see Eddie Lampkin back on the court, but it looks like he's away from the team. Not just focusing on the big guys here, Taylor. Let's go back to the mid-majors. Big West, who you got?
Give me the Fighting Mamadou Ndiaye, if I may. The Anteaters from UC Irvine. One of the best names in college basketball. Mamadou Ndiaye is, if anyone remembers, was 7'6". Is that how tall he was?
He was a big boy.
Dude. Big dude. That was like 10 years ago, though. So, yeah, no, give me Dawson Baker and DJ Davis, both averaging 15 points a game for this UC Irvine team, a team that was tied for the top of the conference at 15-5. Wasn't quite as good as an overall record as UC Santa Barbara, who they tied with. They honestly should just call this conference the UC conference. It's UC San Diego, UC this, UC that, UC everybody, UC IC. We all see a lot of college basketball this coming week. So I'm going to go with UC Irvine, Orange County, stand up, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UC Santa Barbara. All right, so we're staying at the top there. First in the Big West, AJ Mitchell. Remember the name. He is the straw that stirs their drinks. Leads the team in points, steals, and assists. I'm expecting him to push them forward and to win this Big West title. Here's a little nugget for you. They were 16-2 during a stretch of this season. They racked up wins and they go on hot streaks, right? So that 16-2 stretch really did impress me for UC Santa Barbara. They did have a 3-game losing streak in that, which is kind of interesting, and that they were able to still hold on, I guess, to that 1 seed. But they're entering the tourney hot, winners of 4. So maybe UC Santa Barbara is just streaky, but I expect them to get the job done in the Big West. Shout out and apologies to great friend of the program, Anthony Santos, over at Cal State Fullerton. I'll still be rooting for you, my friend. Let's move on now. Conference USA. Now, this is something because in the Conference USA, in my estimation, we already have a team that's in the tournament in FAU, no matter what happens in the conference tournament. Taylor, what say you with Conference USA?
I'm rolling with that team you just referenced in FAU. They've had such a good year this year, best year in program history, really, in a lot of ways. They set an attendance record earlier this year at more than 1 game, I believe. I just think they're on a roll. I think they have that it factor. John L. Davis, Jalen Gaffney. They've got a lot of players that can make it happen. You've got 5 players on the team who average more than 9 points a game. They can get it from anywhere, which I like a lot, especially as it relates to tournament time. They've got a lot of good guards. They don't have a lot of size, but they have a lot of good guards. My estimation would be that they'll get through the conference tournament well, just like they got through the conference well because of that good guard play. When they get to the real big dance, they're probably going to need more than one guy that's taller than like 6'6" or whatever to do anything. But I think for this initial, the conference tournament, I'm rolling with the immense, let's call it, number of guards that these guys have. So I'm going with FAU.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Honestly, I'm taking North Texas, number 1, because I think everyone's going to be taking FAU. Number 2, I trust Grant McCaslin, who I believe is going to be the next coach at Texas Tech once they move on from the accountant, Mark Adams. but I really like Grant McCasland. He's shown that he can win at a big time level in a big time game against Purdue a couple of years ago. And look, they only lost by 4, I think, to FAU earlier this year, or in 2 games. In 2 games they played against FAU, they only lost by 4 both times. They play them tough. And so I think in a big time atmosphere that FAU has never really been in, where they'll probably be favored, Grant McCasland is going to come out on top with that. But I will tell you, Taylor, when I was looking at this and doing a little bit of research, I was like, I probably should have just taken FAU because again, in my deep down in places I don't talk about, I think they're going to win this conference tournament. But hopefully North Texas can give me some points, sort of zig when everyone else is zagging. Let's hit the library. Let's get smart here. The Ivy. Talk to me.
See, I'm gonna surprise you a little bit, I think, when I say who I'm gonna pick. It's gonna be Cornell is who I'm going with.
Aren't they 4th?
They are 4th. There's only
basically
8.
last.
There's only 8 teams though. So yeah, right. But this team, speaking about liking Iowa, Cornell can score the basketball. 83 points a game this year. One of the highest scoring teams in the league or in college basketball throughout the entire year. In fact, that they're a top 10 team in scoring the basketball. So, I think they can beat up on all these other nerds just by filling it up just a little more than, they're the highest scoring team in the conference. That's kind of goes without saying. And like you said, there's only a couple teams I got to get past here. So we're not talking about, talk about a crapshoot. I think that's a lot of times this tournament when you only have as many teams as the Ivy League does. So I'm rolling with Cornell just simply because of their scoring prowess. And, I've watched them and I actually took them a number of times this year in our betting picks. They have 6 guys who are averaging 9 or more points, which is a significant number in college basketball. So yeah, give me Greg Dolan, give me Nazir Williams, and let's go with Cornell.
You did shock me, and it's high level hoop right off the bat in the Ivy League tournament. You're already in the semis, but you did shock me. I was expecting you to either go Yale or Princeton because in my estimation, it's a toss up between those two, the clear cut 2 best teams in the conference. But I'm going Yale here. Very balanced in terms of their contribution. Matt Noling is the bucket getter. EJ Jarvis down low with blocks and rebounds. And Bez Mbeng, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, he gets the assists and the steals. I love how balanced they are amongst those big 3 there for Yale. And they're out of conference. I was looking at their schedule. They're out of conference. Truly impressed me. They played Eastern Washington, who ran through the Big Sky, and then Vermont, who's in their tournament title game, and then Colorado, who's still alive in the Pac-12 as we record this, and then Kentucky as well. So those are some really good teams that they played out of conference, and I think it's going to do them wonders here in the Ivy League tournament. Give me Yale. Maction, who you got?
I'm rolling with Kent State, a team that is pretty hot all year, really. Their only recent loss in the last 2 months was to Ball State So Hard University on the road there a few weeks ago. Played teams like a Houston, if you've heard of them, to a 5-point game earlier this year. Lost by 2 at Charleston. Lost by 7 at Gonzaga. You're talking about a team that's kind of tested. Those are high-level tournament teams. I know this was a number of months ago, way back in the non-conference schedule, but, started the year with really a pretty tough schedule. And then continued that into conference play. Finished second in the conference at 15-3. Now Toledo is the number 1 seed in this conference, and they've won 15 games in a row. I'd say that's a pretty significant number. So they're obviously the team to beat. But at some point, let's just say they're due. Toledo lost, or Kent State beat Toledo earlier this year, so they've shown the propensity to be able to beat and or compete with really a lot of the best teams in the country. Sincere Carey, is there a better name in college basketball? I don't know. Had 35 the other night against Akron. So I'm rolling with Sincere Carey, Kent State. Give me the Golden Flashes.
I said a while ago that this had, maybe even preseason, that this had the opportunity to be low-key the most theater of the mid-major conferences. And when you look at the standings from a standings perspective, there's a lot of good teams at the top. The top 4 is very, very competitive. You mentioned Toledo. Obviously, you're going with Kent State. Akron, which is a year removed from pushing UCLA to the brink, actually in the NCAA tournament last year. But I'm actually going to go with Toledo, the safe pick here. And there's, like I said, a ton of capable teams, but I like Toledo the best. It's all about Ray J. Dennis. Comes over from Boise State. He has tournament experience. He's played in those big games. He's played in the Mountain West. So I love Ray J. Dennis because he can light it up. That guy is going to be electric in this tournament. And you know what? You say Kent State's due. Toledo's also due. It's time to exercise their demons. We talked about Furman, who's going on to the NCAA tournament from the SoCon. Toledo has been on that doorstep the last, what seems 3 years, and they can't get it done. They have to exercise their demons and finally punch their ticket for the first time since 1980, which, by the way, Taylor, is the last time Furman went to the NCAA tournament. I believe the stars align. I think there's a lot of similarities between Furman and Toledo from that sort of perspective. I'm going to go with the Rockets here. It's time to go, man. It is time to go. We referenced it a couple weeks ago about the golden age of recruiting classes. I think we were talking about Auburn, but that's obviously applicable to U.S. soccer, right? Or soccer in general, the golden age. This is it, Toledo, because if you miss this window, you're probably going to be back in the doldrums. So give me the Rockets there. MAAC. Now, Taylor, let's add an A.
The old Metro Atlantic, as some would call it. I'm going with Iona. Ran away with this conference in a lot of ways this year. They've got this pretty good basketball coach. His last name is Pitino.
Heard of him.
He's been around a little bit. Maybe he'll take the Syracuse job.
Maybe. Let's throw him out there.
Yeah. Can we start that rumor?
Let's just start breaking news.
Hey, let's trade one old crotchety guy for another. Anyway, no, I'm rolling with Iona, and honestly, a lot to do with Pitino. I don't want to say that this is small potatoes for him because he's been there for a couple of years now at this point, but I'd say this guy is coaching some bigger games than the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference tournament. I think he instills that type of confidence in his team. They won this conference by 4 games, and that was even just over Rider, the second place team. They finished 6 games ahead of 3rd and 4th place. A dominant performance in this conference, and one that I cannot turn a blind eye to.
I think it's hilarious that Pitino knows how much power he wields and sneaky shits on the MAAC and even Iona itself. He takes these little subtle jabs trying to compare it to big time ACC basketball or SEC basketball when he was at Kentucky. It's kind of funny. Here's me swinging for the fences. This is where I start to really let loose on my batting swings. I'm going to go with Siena. All right. And this is almost like Conference USA. For me, I probably should have taken FAU there. Probably should have taken Iona here. And I'm probably going to regret the Siena pick. But there was a time where Siena was atop the conference. I think they were a good thing of mine, much like Kennesaw State. So hopefully that comes to fruition as well. But they've seriously fizzled. They're entering the tournament on a 5-game losing streak. Not great for the Saints. Hoping we get some sort of NAU type of run to the title game. That said, they did smack Iona earlier this year. I'm talking damn near 20 points or so. So I'm hoping Siena can recapture that and regain it. Swinging for the fences here. Give me the value pick with the Saints.
So Siena, I was rolling it in against the spread with Siena earlier this year. Rolling it in. They were 14-5 against the spread at one point this year. And then in their last 9 games, they've gone 1-8 against the spread. That's unfortunate. And, when I first looked at your Siena pick, because I think this goes without saying that it's not exactly like we are watching every single Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference game, right? So I was like, oh, Siena, yeah, that's not a bad pick. And then I went back and looked at what they've done recently, and I was like, oh shit, what happened to these guys? Like they were doing pretty well.
No, you're right, Taylor. Honestly, this is a bad pick from me, I think.
Okay, no, hold on.
I genuinely think it's
that's
a bad
not what
pick.
I'm saying. That's not
no,
what
this
I'm
is
saying
this is like the lowest amount of faith I have in a team of any of my Jerome picks. But hey, that's why we pick them. Let's move now to the MEAC. Talk to me.
Shout out to friend of the program, John Hutchison. We're going with Howard, the old Bison. I'm a big Bison guy. I don't think they pronounce it with a Z down there at Howard, but that's who I'm rolling with. They won this conference this year. A conference that only plays 14 conference games, by the way, pretty low on the poll there in terms of number of games played. They're led by Elijah Hawkins and Reese Brown. I guess they're not led by Reese Brown, but they've got 3, 4, 5 players, 6 players that score 9 or more points a game, which apparently is my line of the day for if I feel like you're a good basketball player or not, given my recent conversations here. But they won this conference. A great name in Shai Odom. You got to love a guy named Shai. Also have a Kobe on the team as well. Can't pass up names like Kobe, Shai, Freedom Reigns on the bench there.
That's the best one.
And I'm going to say that Howard reigns in this conference tournament.
I'm going to go with Maryland Eastern Shore. All right. If we're sticking with the baseball references, with the Siena pick, I probably swung out of my shoes, batting helmet flew off, and I went back to the dugout with my tail between my legs. But I'm back up again a couple innings later. But this time I'm choking up just a little bit, still swinging for the warning track, maybe trying to get those extra bases. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're only 2 games back of the 1 seed Bison. Like I said, the four seed value, and they beat Howard once. I take that into consideration. Zion, don't call me Harry Styles, and Riley Davis. My guy Riley Davis tweeted about Maryland Eastern Shore, but Zion Styles is the guy for Maryland Eastern Shore, and I think we're going to get a surprise here out of the MEAC. All right, let's go back to some conferences that we may have better eyes on. Mountain West, Taylor.
Well, here's another team I can't quit, and that's Boise State. That's who I'm rolling with, the Broncos. Shout out to my sister, Boise State alum. And I actually know a couple of the Boise State former mascots as well. One was the head, one was the ass of the horse, is the joke we always like to make about them. But there's just not another team that I like enough in this conference is really kind of the answer for me. Do not like Utah State's chances, to be honest with you. Not a big Nevada guy. San Jose State, a team that we've talked about as a good thing, which it is a good thing, but not good enough for me to take them. New Mexico is terrible, despite being the last undefeated team in the country. It's, for me, I just started breaking it down and, trying to figure out, okay, which team do I I don't dislike any of these teams, but which team do I dislike the least? And I'm going to go with Marcus Shaver, Max Rice, and the Boise State Broncos.
It's nice to be aligned again, Taylor. Welcome back to me and you. I got Boise State as well. Leon Rice, all those players that you just mentioned, battle tested from tournament experiences before. But I love Tyson Degenhart. Ever since Coach Roberto Bergerson, when he came onto the program, told us about him and said, you got to watch out for this guy. He's been spectacular all year. Of course, I think a lot of people are going to go with San Diego State, and I wouldn't blame them. I actually think San Diego State's going to win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. But right now, Boise State, I think Leon Rice has done a terrific job with them, and I think this momentum continues to roll in the Mountain West for the Broncos. All right, our conference, Pac-12, out in Vegas.
I mean, do I need to say it?
Yeah.
The Harvard of the desert, the University of Arizona is what I'm rolling with. But really what I want to see, and I don't want to talk about Arizona, I do want to talk about UCLA a little more and just say, it's not going to be surprising to me if UCLA or Arizona wins it. Outside of that, to me, it would be a major surprise to me if USC won it. Somehow Oregon fucked around and finished 4th in this conference, and they're horrible, terrible. I can't even begin to say how much I do not have any confidence in an Oregon, no confidence in Arizona State, Washington State. Utah looked like they were going to be pretty good for a while. No, not them either. And then teams like Colorado, Washington, and way on down are just terrible. So really, I think this is just a 2-man race between Arizona and UCLA. But what I want to know about this conference more than anything else is, like we talked about with Jaylen Clark, is how is UCLA going to play without him? Fortunately, they've got a 3-game stretch here where they can figure that out, and hopefully they can, I guess. If I'm being a neutral person, then hopefully they can. If I'm being a non-neutral person, then fuck them. But I do really want to see how they play without him, especially if that Arizona games comes to fruition, and that will be some great theater. You're talking about the two West Coast traditional powers, getting together for a rubber match in Vegas. Not much you can ask for if you're a college basketball fan more than that.
I'm going to go with Arizona here as well. We need the rubber match. We need Arizona UCLA round 3. I am curious to see what UCLA looks like without Jaylen Clark as well. The only thing I'll push back on though, Taylor, is on Washington State. I think they're red hot right now. Gay, Bamba, they can play. And I know they just dispatched a terrible Cal team, but that's what you do and what you're supposed to do if I'm supposed to take you seriously. There's a ton of terrible teams in the Pac-12, but they compete against each other for what it seems like. Washington State took care of business. I also value their win in Tucson where it wasn't even close. So just don't be shocked if we see Washington State in, let's say, the semifinals, but I do expect Arizona to win this conference tournament. Here's a little nugget for you, and I'm trying to think. I don't have a fact, though. Fact checked, I should say. But Taylor, has Tommy Lloyd won or never? Gosh, I'm an idiot.
Has he not played in the conference championship game?
No, but hasn't he won them all too?
I think St. Mary's won it one year at the conference tournament.
At Arizona, though.
Oh. Well, it's only his second year, so.
Well, he still played in the Roman main event or whatever.
Okay.
He won the Maui. He won the. That's 3. I think that's 3
I see what you're saying.
Tournaments, and they've won them all. So I'm going to go with Arizona here.
I like that. No, I'm with you there. Wow, you really hit me with a new nugget there. I appreciate that. I was going to say something that I'm sure was important, but now my mind's all flustered. So let's move on.
Apologies for that. SEC, who you got?
We're rolling with Bama. I really wanted to take Kentucky. But I kind of figured Kentucky would be the hot pick. And I haven't checked back on our Jerome standings now that everybody has their week 2 picks in. I just kind of assumed that Kentucky was going to be the hot pick just simply because they have, for a team that we gave a lot of shit to this year, they're actually really not in a bad spot right now. I don't feel super highly about Texas A&M, who finished second in this conference. Arkansas was kind of the team I really liked going into this year, but obviously they dealt with a lot injury-wise, so that never really came to fruition. Tennessee without Ziegler's out for me. Missouri don't love. Honestly, this SEC slate down the stretch didn't really come to be as good as I thought it was going to be throughout this year. Obviously, injuries were the key cog in that. No other real reason other than that. But at the end of the day, Alabama was the best team in this conference. I'd say that even though they only beat Texas A&M by 1 game in the standings, I'd say Alabama was significantly better than every other team in this conference, and I just couldn't get away from picking them.
Yeah, it's a fair pick. I am actually going to go with Kentucky because of the hot trendy pick. And I just can't quit them. I haven't been able to quit them for the past 2 years. I took them to win the regular season SEC title, and then they lose to South Carolina earlier this year at home. Appalling stuff. But they have gotten the ship right. The SEC tournament, I would have gone Vols. If Ziegler was healthy, I would have gone Vols there. But I have to lean Kentucky here. I'm just hoping and praying that we get a real Jacob Toppin. CJ Frederick, please hit some threes. I know what I'm going to get with Sheboy. I know he's come under a little bit of criticism for his defensive efforts and maybe some of his mental errors. But I just like this Kentucky team. I think the SEC is a bit open, and I think they're going to pull off an upset against Alabama at some point. So I'll go with the Kentucky Wildcats here. Southland Conference, Taylor, my guys are already out. Northwestern State, the title game was played last night. Hansel and Manuel had an awesome block, but no celebrating for Natchitoches. Who did you end up picking?
Nichols, and they lost to McNeese State, who won 11 games this year in the first round, I believe. So not a lot of analysis other than just another "you suck, Taylor." So that's all I got for you on that.
Same, man. Cross them out. We both lost that one. The SWAC attack. Who you got?
So I got Grambling here. As an expert on the SWAC as I am, I don't know. I just didn't want to pick Alcorn. I have beef with Southern, the Jaguars. I'm not a supporter of that institution. That's a age-old tale there. Texas Southern. The only thing I know about them is they beat ASU in their second game of the year, I believe, here in Tempe. Wanted to maybe roll with Jackson State, but Dion left, so that's not applicable to me either. So just as I was pacing it down here, Grambling is the only team that got to 20-plus wins in this conference, and if you look at their overall win-loss, they were 5 ahead of Alcorn, and 8 ahead of the next best team in Southern. And so I was trying to go with more than just whatever happened in conference, and Grambling did enough for me. Grambling has also won 10 games in a row. Obviously headed into the tournament pretty hot. So all those things considered, can't sit here and tell you that I know a lot about Cameron Kristen's game or Cartier Gordon or Shondarius Cowart. Can't tell you that I've watched a lot of Shondarius Cowart or Cartier Gordon. But I mean, how could you not support a guy named Cartier? So that's what I'm rolling with is Grambling State.
Big into the names. I'm going Grambling State as well. Again, one of these conferences where we're not going to sit here and pretend like we've watched a bunch of it and crunched the numbers. They only lost by 3 to the leader of the conference in Alcorn State. That was big. They can be competitive with them, and I could easily see them beating them in the conference tournament. But here's what really pushed me over the edge, Taylor. Grambling beat Colorado, and they beat Vandy. Okay, Colorado's not a world beater, but it's a power team that's still playing in their conference tournament as we record. And Vanderbilt has the SEC Coach of the Year, one of the SEC Coaches of the Year, in Jerry Stackhouse. And Vandy really turned it on towards the end of the year. I think those are 2 huge wins. They're proven out of conference. I like Grambling here. And I think, again, that's going to carry over here to the SWAC tournament. T, let's go ahead, get on out of here. I know we ran through these, but last but not least, the WAC.
I had to be a homer on this. I had to go with a school that's located just about 20 miles here from where I sit in Scottsdale, and that's the Grand Canyon Lopes Up, which looks a lot like a Texas Hook'em Horns, unless you're wearing purple. Been big on the purple teams this year, as we've previously discussed. Grand Canyon has been a school that has been good since they're kind of like Merrimack. Unfairly really kept out of the tournament a couple years back in the beginning of when they first became D1. They were back in those days. They were keeping it close with teams like Louisville. A Rick Pitino Louisville coach team was beating a team like San Diego State. Fun times, and they've really kept that going throughout their time as a D1 program. Southern Utah, not in love with. We know this conference a little bit just simply because for me they're a West Coast conference, so it's one of the teams that just happens to be on late when everybody in the East is sleeping. Utah Valley, there's a team we just talked about on last program, and I just like I'm going to be a homer really more than anything else here and go with Grand Canyon.
I'm going Utah Valley. It's time to get Mark Madsen in the tournament, and I want to see him win a game in the NCAA tournament so he can break out the same dance moves that he did at the Lakers title parade in 2001. I like Utah Valley here. They were bad to start the year. They weren't very good. But after a loss to Boise State during Thanksgiving, they're 21-3. They are rolling right now, and I don't think anyone is going to get in their way of a conference title. So I'm going to go with Utah Valley strictly for the Mark Madsen theater and the dancing, and also because they're a buzzsaw at the moment. And in these, I don't see them getting tripped up. Hopefully not. So Utah Valley, punch your ticket to the dance. Taylor, let's get on out of here, man. This was great. Week 2 Jerome in the books. Next time, T, we're going to have a bracket to talk about.
Boy, I don't know. I feel a little different about this year's tournament. Maybe I just have a little more time available next week than I did last year for the tournament. I don't know why. I feel different about it just because I think I'm going to actually be able to sit down and watch every single game as we traditionally do. Last year I had to do this thing that they call work, and pay the bills, I think, at a couple points.
The rat race.
Yeah, I assume I'll have something to do those 2 days, but I have cleared my schedule a little better than I did last year, and so I'm pretty excited to sit down, kick back, watch this tournament, see how Arizona does, see how UCLA does, and really see if we were correct in any of our assumptions about these teams throughout the year. And excited to see if anyone can knock off the Shark in Jerome this year too.
Yeah, well, you're only in third place, right? So I say
No,
only like only.
So let me. I said this before the program is I thought I was in third place, but I realized that the keeper of the Jerome hadn't added up every score yet. So I'm actually in 8th place. So really, my confidence level in my Jerome picks has petered out even just in this program alone.
Well, hey, we got week 2. That's why all of these are going to be winners, except for the ones you and I disagreed on. Those are going to me, hopefully. But enjoy the rest of conference tournament week. Like I said, we're going to be breaking down matchups and brackets on next Tuesday's episode. Thank you again for listening. We will catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.